All righty. Everybody settled in. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Peter Bolland. Welcome to Friday Reflections, our weekly Friday half-hour program here at San Diego Oasis every Friday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time. Thank you so much to all of you who join us every Friday, and a special shout out and thank you to those of us who are today attending for the first time. A special welcome to you. Thanks for taking a chance here. It's been, as I say every week, it's been a privilege and a gift, really, and an honor to have been given this opportunity to be here with you in this rather unstructured way. You know, I normally in a webinar would have a PowerPoint and a pretty tight bullet point list of things that I want to work through. But I thought from the start that Friday Reflections shouldn't have that much forethought. It should be more lived and spontaneous, like us just having coffee together, except I do all the talking, which isn't probably the greatest conversation in the world. But given the nature and the format of the technology, that's kind of how it works. So anyhow, I really appreciate you being here. And many of you find me through the San Diego Oasis website, or maybe through other social media, or through my .com, peterbolland.com. However you found us, thanks for finding us. But this is the group of people that I want to share that news with, because so many of you have attended so many of these events before and are already on my mailing list anyway, and certainly well plugged into the Oasis community where so much of this stuff happens. So, all right, my friends, listen. So last time we were thinking about experiments. I was sharing with you when I first encountered Gandhi's remarkable autobiography called My Experiments with Truth when I was a teenager, right? And that whole approach to philosophy, that idea that truth is not something we can get secondhand. Sure, teachers and great books and stuff can provoke us, can show us things we haven't seen before, but we must always, Gandhi argued, and I would agree, test out any truth claim in the laboratory of our own experience. And as Buddha also argued, be lamps unto ourselves, to pragmatically check these truth claims for their efficacy, just in the same way a pharmaceutical company would test the effectiveness of a new medication. Does it work or not? And if it does work, what are the side effects? What does it cost you? So that's what we do, I think, in philosophy too. We try these ideas on and see if let's just keep this simple, if they make us happier, if they make us more free, if they make us feel more alive and in love with our lives and in love with one another, then you're on the right path, right? The fruit is sweet, and you know what it tastes like when life is going better or when it is going worse. And so I think I love that maybe we could learn to trust ourselves a little bit better in our own experimentations with truth. One of the things I was playing with you with last week was the idea of resentment. And I was sharing with you lots of my resentments about stuff that happens to me when I ride my bike around Lake Murray and or just in life in general, and how, resentment is a luxury that I can't afford because it costs me everything. It costs me my humility. It costs me my serenity. It costs me my sanity. So another word for resentment is judgment, going around shoulding on everything and everyone, and the experiment of trying to remove the word should from my vocabulary, and instead learning how to peacefully be with what is, and then go from there. This is often misunderstood as some sort of pacifism and let the world, be a doormat, let the world wipe its feet on you. That ain't it at all. This is about starting to take action from a place of acceptance of what is, and then get to work making things better, because things are pretty messed up, but not living in the constant recrimination consciousness of resentment and judgment. I wonder how it's going with you. I left you a couple of challenges last week. Like, it's a fun thing to experiment with, to kind of check your own resentments, check yourself being critical or dismissive or condescending or angry and resentful against others because they aren't driving the way you think they should drive, or they aren't raising their kids the way you think they should raise their kids, or they're listening to a kind of music that you think is not such a good kind of music, on and on and on. And notice again how it functions. Notice how the consciousness of resentment and judgment functions. It functions to separate you from everyone else. It functions to aggrandize yourself. It's the ego's favorite game, resentment and judgment, because it makes you better than them. This is the fruit of our experimentation with that idea, that we start to realize that, resentment and judgment is causing me a lot of damage, not to mention annoying the heck out of everyone around you. But what does it cost me? So that was an experiment we were discussing last week, and I wonder if you all had some fun applying that this week. But I wanted to try another one on with you today. And there's this phrase that keeps coming to mind. It is this, that it is the claim that we are self-illuminating consciousness. That you are self-illuminating consciousness, that I am self-illuminating consciousness. Let's unpack that. So I think this claim, this idea came out of my encounters with Hinduism or Vedanta philosophy, which essentially makes that claim. But again, we don't want to accept anything on anybody's authority. We want to test it in the experience, in the laboratory of our own experience. So let's look at it. And it's clearly the claim in Hinduism that all is Brahmanatman. All is an emanation, all forms, all matter, all energy, all consciousness rains like water out of a cloud, emanates from the one, Brahman. And Brahman is present within all conscious beings as Atman. So Brahmanatman is the formless, sacred ground of being that we are. Only we don't know it because Maya, or illusion, is this grid of confusion that keeps me from realizing my identity with Brahmanatman. Yeah. So the fundamental bedrock claim is that in that spiel I just gave you is that you and I are ultimate reality. We are self-illuminating consciousness. That's why meditation is such a potent and effective spiritual practice in the Indian traditions. I don't need to literally go to the Himalayas to find God. Let's use the God word for a second. As Muhammad put it, Allah is nearer to us than the jugular vein. Not one of our steps leads away from it because it is what we are. Therefore, in the perennial wisdom of so many of the world's wisdom traditions, the best way to realize what I really am is to sit down and shut up and empty out. And that is a fascinating claim. Look, this isn't church, right? I'm not preaching that idea. This is a philosophical inquiry. We are experimenting with this idea. What if it's true? Let's test it. Or let's see what happens when we try it on and compare and contrast it with some of the alternatives. That's what philosophical inquiry is. That's what the philosophic life is, not the dogmatic proclamation of truth claims and then the tireless defense of those truth claims, but the willingness to try every truth claim on and to be humble enough to not ever plant your flag too firmly anywhere, and be willing to let all truth claims be provisional, be partially true, be like maps that get us closer, but not final destinations. Yeah. So that opens up another question. Where does wisdom come from? Where does truth or enlightenment come from? We'll say more about that on the 27th when we do our What is Enlightenment webinar. But Some people say truth comes from God or from gods, that it comes from outside of us, and we are to receive it through, I don't know, revealed scripture or through religious experience, or, to be filled with something from outside of us. But look closer. In all the great world's religions, Hinduism particularly, but even in the West, even in Christianity, say, when you look closer, it's kind of a low-level spirituality to say, I am an insignificant little wretch, and the almighty, transcendent, perfect boundlessness is up here. And if I believe in the right things, then God will trickle some of that boundlessness into me, and I will get rescued by the cosmic lifeguard from the pool I am currently drowning in, if I believe correctly and if I join on the right ideological team and so on. Well, in the mystical Christian voices, that's a kind of impoverished spirituality, that the deeper realization is that it, whatever it is located within us. Paul's really good on this in the New Testament. He sort of throws a monkey wrench into the whole dualism thing by talking about the Christ within, the inner Christ, and metanoia, which we've shared quite a bit about here, that coming into a new consciousness, coming into a new way of being. It's not about believing the right things for Paul. It has nothing to do with concepts and which ones are true and not true. This is a shift into another way of being in the world. And that is something that happens in here when we experience the oneness of, in Paul's language, Christ consciousness. Now, if Christianity is a problem for you, if you're have an aversion to it, then we can just pivot here into something that has nothing to do with that, at least in terms of its terminology, and think about this in a more universal way, or even in a non-theistic or atheistic way. Every time you hear the word God or Christ, just substitute the word life or the universe. Because again, we're not arguing anymore about beliefs. We're not discussing this God concept versus that God concept. So what about this other question? What are the role of teachers or teachings? Do we need teachers from outside of us or teachings from outside of us to bring about this transformation that our soul is longing for, this reunion, this recalibration, this reintegration with our own mother, with our own sacred source? I'm immersed in a reading these days of Julian of Norwich. He's a wonderful 14th century English mystic who talks very much about God being a mother and about being a nurturing God and a non-judgmental God. It's a wonderful voice. I'm sure we'll hear more about Julian in upcoming Friday reflections, but she certainly speaks, as all mystics do, about it welling up from within. That even with teachers or teachings, that in the end, the thoughts and words of others are catalysts only. We cannot receive truth secondhand. The thoughts and teachings of others are catalysts that provoke or spark or inspire or make possible our own upwelling wisdom. I would put it this way, that they remove the hindrances, the blockages that are keeping our own inherent expressions of wisdom bottled up. Great teachers, great teachings, uncork the bottle. The poet Hafiz has a wonderful poem about this that I want to share with you right now. It's called, "I Hope You Won't Sue This Old Man." Hafiz says, "I have nothing to say, for God has taken his sharp knife and completely hollowed me. Yet a mysterious wind comes by and moves the invisible. I enter your soul. Your beauty, dear pilgrim, startles me, causes my spirit's foot to slip against one of the lute strings on your heart. Then Hafiz just translates the cries of your love as if they were my own words. I hope you won't sue this drunk old man for that, Hafiz. What a beautifully playful way, and boy, it is. Hafiz is nothing if not playful. What a beautiful, playful way to talk about truth coming from inside of us. Even the poet says, look, all I'm doing is channeling your own longing. I slipped into your heart, and then I slipped and I accidentally plucked one of the lute strings of your heart, and the music came out of my mouth. So isn't this true? When you hear a great song, when you hear a great poem, when you hear a great teaching, or when you read a great scripture or a great philosophical text, doesn't it feel like recognition? Don't you just feel over and over again like you are simply hearing your own deepest insights that you were incapable of articulating? That is a fascinating dynamic that really cuts to the heart of this inquiry that we're engaged in right now. Who is the teacher really, and where does the teaching come from? So all learning as recognition, all learning as remembering, which is exactly how the philosopher Plato put it. That all learning is really just remembering. And I have to say, as I share with you many times, the most common feedback I ever get whenever I talk somewhere is people come up to me afterwards and say, thanks for the reminder. I love that. It's like it says in Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament, there's nothing new under the sun. We are just all walking each other home. We are just here helping each other remember what we have forgotten, because the busyness of life creates this calcified layer over us. That's what the Hindus call Maya. We fall back asleep and we must shake each other awake. Every Friday at 10, we must shake each other awake every time we read poetry, every time we meditate, every time we pray, every time we walk through the neighborhood. So all spiritual and philosophical work is a process of subtraction, not addition. And again, removing hindrances. I'm pulling that image right from Meister Eckhart, the great 14th century. A lot of stuff going on in the 14th century. That great 14th century Roman Catholic Franciscan, I believe, priest in Germany, Meister Eckhart, who put it that way in his writing. He said, God is not found by a process of addition, but by a process of subtraction. So we are constantly unpacking and removing the hindrances that keep us from seeing. There's a wonderful line in the Upanishads that we are like a lamp, a lantern, a oil lantern with a wick burning in it, and the glass is all covered with soot. And only when we rub the lamp and remove the soot does the light emerge and rejoin the one light. So we are like oil lamps all covered with soot. And sessions like this for me kind of help me clean the glass a little bit, and I start to feel something coming through that ultimately has nothing to do with the words, nothing to do with the teachings. It's an experience. I ran into something on Facebook this morning I want to share with you. And I mentioned the recovery programs last week, NAAA. Again, this isn't a meeting of that sort, but some of you have experience in that area. And especially to those of you that don't, I want to share something with you from the big book, as they call it in AA. But first, a quote from Nadia Bowles-Weber. Nadia Bowles-Weber is just a wild and crazy heretical Lutheran minister. She's tattooed head to toe and pierced, and she drops F-bombs in her sermons all the time. She's amazing. Nadia Bowles-Weber. So I'm going to say a bad word because I'm going to read one of her quotes. She seems incapable of speaking without cussing, which is kind of like me. So, and she works a lot with recovery groups in her ministry as a Lutheran pastor. She said, I love that the 12 promises of the AA Big Book. I love that they are simply descriptions of the way God cleanses us, redeems us, and renews us when we just clear our shit out of the way. I think that this is how our spiritual practices work, she goes on. They don't earn us anything. They are just a process of decluttering our hearts and minds so that we can experience and draw upon what is always already there, God's love and mercy. Now, if you don't care for the God concept and the Lutheran way of talking, then that's not for you. But I want to share with you in kind of really concise form the 12 promises of the big book. Forget about alcoholism and drug addiction. I don't know what your relationship is to all those substances, but think about this in terms of spiritual growth. What starts to happen when you come out of ignorance and start tiptoeing gently into more enlightened consciousness, more increasing wisdom? Here are the 12 promises of the big book. 1, we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. 2, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. 3, we will comprehend the word serenity. 4, we will know peace. 5, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Promise number 6, the feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Here's the 7th promise of emerging consciousness. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Promise number 8, self-seeking will slip away. Promise number 9, our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Promise number 10, fear of people and fear of economic insecurity will leave us. Promise number 11, we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. I love that one. And finally, number 12 of the 12 promises from the big book. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Now, you can look that up. I know that was a lot, and if you're trying to take notes, I'm sorry. Just Google the 12 promises. It'll come right up in myriad forms, the 12 promises of AA. So I was struck in my reading of that this morning because for many reasons, but one, it sounds like I can't think of a better description in all the wisdom literature I've studied of like how it's going to feel when you start to get better. And it reminds me of the conversion literature of Christianity, whether it's St. John of the Cross, which I just finished reading his classic, The Dark Night of the Soul, or Julian of Norwich's much more positive theology, or Bruce McLaren, or Richard Rohr. You've heard me drop all these names around here before, that when you start to get better, things get a little easier. The darkness begins to lift, not because you figured out how to lift it, because you allow it to be lifted. That's the sense in which, again, in my experiments with truth, wellness happens more through a process of allowance than achievement. It's this curious blend of effort and effortlessness. So I want to close, as I always do, with one last poem. I've had a little bit of reading today, but this is one. I'm going back to a poem by one of my favorite poets, Fred Lamott. I haven't read this one here on Friday Reflection since last August, so I thought it was time to trot this one back out. Fred Lamott, Lamotte. This is a poem of his called Follow the One. And I think it fits nicely with what we've been thinking about today, that claim that each of us is self-illuminating consciousness. Way deep down beneath all the other layers, each of us is self-illuminating consciousness. I know we'll explore that when we read Rumi and Hafiz this coming Tuesday. But here's Fred Lamott's poem called Follow the One. Follow the one who leaves no footprints. Let the next inhalation be your teacher. Those who stop seeking are anointed by presence. I give you a solemn promise. If you follow this pathless way, a golden flower will surely, softly, silently explode in your body. The very motion of your heart's stillness. How can I be so sure? I have tasted the honey of the master's glance, and I know where it is stored. In you, my friend, in you. Follow the One by Fred Lamont. Namaste. Thanks for joining us here for Friday Reflections. See you soon.